Have you ever noticed that a small scrape, a sprain, or even a simple cold seems to linger longer after 50? What was once a quick recovery now stretches into days or weeks, and it feels almost unfair. But this slowing is not a flaw. It's your body speaking, quietly revealing the profound changes in how cells communicate, tissues rebuild, and energy flows. Every delay, every ache, is a window into the invisible processes of aging. A reminder that healing after 50 is no longer instant, but deliberate, patient, and deeply intelligent. As we move past the age of 50, one of the most profound yet invisible shifts in our bodies occurs at the microscopic level, in the way our cells communicate with one another. Our cells are not isolated islands. They exist within a vast dynamic network, sending and receiving countless messages every second to coordinate growth, repair, and defense. When you scrape your knee, twist your ankle, or even experience a minor viral infection, it is not merely the tissue itself that responds. It is a symphony of cellular signals orchestrating a response, each cell knowing its role in the larger choreography of healing. In youth, these messages travel swiftly and decisively, like a perfectly rehearsed ensemble, and the body responds almost instinctively. But after 50, the clarity and precision of these signals begin to fade, subtle yet significant, altering the pace and efficiency of recovery. At the center of this process are chemical messengers known as cytokines, growth factors, and hormones, which act as the language of the cells. They are the instructions that tell immune cells where to go, when to clear away damaged tissue, and when to summon new cells to rebuild what has been lost. Over decades, the production and responsiveness of these messengers gradually decline. The immune cells that once mobilized with the swiftness of a well-trained force now hesitate, slower to arrive at the scene of damage. The fibroblasts and stem cells that construct new tissue take longer to receive the cues to divide and differentiate. The intricate feedback loops that ensure repair occurs in the right order, at the right intensity, and for the right duration become noisier, less precise, and more prone to delay, so that even a minor wound requires a longer period to fully mend. This weakening of cellular communication is not random. It reflects a lifetime of cumulative stress, environmental exposures, and the natural wear of biological machinery. DNA damage, oxidative stress, and subtle changes in the cellular environment all influence how messages are sent and received. It is as though the cells are still trying to communicate in a language they once spoke fluently, but now there is static on the line, and signals sometimes arrive garbled, incomplete, or too late. Inflammation, which is essential for initiating repair, may persist longer than necessary or arise in places where it is not needed, subtly interfering with the delicate choreography of healing. This is why an ankle sprain, once a matter of days, might stretch into weeks, and why minor cuts linger longer than they once did. The slowdown is also connected to the aging of the cells themselves. Senescent cells, those that have stopped dividing but do not die, accumulate over time. They do not simply become inert. They release their own chemical signals, often pro-inflammatory, that interfere with the normal messaging among healthy cells. It is a quiet disruption, a gentle but persistent fog over the conversations that guide repair. Even when new cells are recruited, they are entering a tissue environment that has changed, where signals are dulled, energy is more limited, and the coordination required for efficient healing is compromised. Our nervous system also plays a role in this intricate communication network. Nerves sense injury, pain, and stress, and translate these cues into chemical messages that influence the activity of immune and repair cells. With age, nerve signaling slows, reflexes are less immediate, and the finely tuned dialogue between the nervous system and cellular networks is muted. Healing is not only delayed, but feels different, sometimes more tender, sometimes more stubborn, because the body itself is operating on a slower tempo. Yet, within this slowing lies remarkable intelligence. The body does not abandon repair, it adapts. By stretching the timeline of healing, it reduces the risk of errors that could arise from rushing a process in an environment where resources are more limited. Each signal, though weaker, is evaluated against decades of accumulated cellular experience. There is a measured wisdom in this delay, a balancing act between urgency and caution, between rapid reconstruction and sustainable recovery. The cells have learned to be more deliberate, to weigh the need for repair against the long-term integrity of tissues, to avoid overextending resources and creating complications. Lifestyle and environment continue to influence the clarity of cellular communication long after 50. Nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, and exposure to toxins all affect the production, release, and reception of chemical messengers. Even subtle improvements, adequate protein to supply amino acids, antioxidants to reduce oxidative stress, moderate activity to stimulate circulation, and restorative sleep to allow cellular housekeeping, can enhance the quality of these messages, improving the pace and success of repair. Conversely, poor habits exacerbate the noise and further slow the system, highlighting that while aging sets a stage for delayed communication, choices continue to write the performance. The elegance of this system lies in its complexity and adaptability. Cells do not merely respond to injury. They respond to context, to past experiences, to the cumulative state of the organism. The weakening of signals is not a sign of failure, but a recalibration, a negotiation between the body's capabilities and its current needs. Understanding this microscopic conversation allows us to approach recovery with patience, compassion, and awareness, recognizing that delays are not weakness, but evidence of the intricate intelligence woven into our biology. Every cell, every signal, every pause in repair is a testament to the resilience and subtle wisdom of the human body. As we age, one of the most profound shifts in our physical resilience occurs not in the muscles themselves, nor in the bones that frame our body, but in the connective tissues that bind it all together. These tissues, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, fascia, and skin, are woven from an intricate network of collagen fibers, elastin, and proteoglycans, each playing a crucial role in maintaining flexibility, strength, and structural integrity. In youth, collagen is abundant. Elastic fibers snap back with ease, and every movement is cushioned by the supple, adaptive quality of these tissues. Injuries heal quickly, joints glide smoothly, and the body tolerates strain without hesitation. But after 50, the very scaffolding of our tissues begins to change, and the once fluid, resilient network that supported us starts to stiffen and fray. Collagen, the most abundant protein in the human body, is the backbone of connective tissue. It provides tensile strength, anchoring cells, and giving structure to ligaments and tendons that connect muscles to bone. Elastin fibers, interspersed within this matrix, allow tissues to stretch and recoil, lending spring and adaptability to every movement. Over decades, the production of new collagen slows, and the existing fibers undergo chemical cross-linking, a process in which molecules bind together, increasing stiffness but reducing flexibility. This natural alteration is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but over years it accumulates, transforming tissue from a dynamic, responsive system into a more rigid framework. The tendons no longer absorb shock as efficiently, ligaments become less forgiving, and cartilage wears more quickly under repeated stress. The result is a body that feels less responsive, more cautious in its movements, and slower to recover from injury. A sprained ankle, a pulled hamstring, or even a minor shoulder strain can linger longer than it once would have, not because the body has failed, but because the scaffolding of tissue repair is operating within a changed environment. The collagen that once healed with speed now requires more time to remodel, and the elastin that allowed effortless recoil has less spring, increasing the risk of microtears with even modest exertion. Healing is still possible, but it is no longer immediate. It requires a more deliberate rhythm, a careful rebalancing of tension and force, and often more rest to allow the tissues to adapt without further strain. This change is not solely about structure. It is also a reflection of the molecular and cellular environment. Fibroblasts, the specialized cells responsible for producing collagen and maintaining the extracellular matrix, become less prolific with age. Their responsiveness to signaling molecules diminishes, and the balance between synthesis and degradation shifts. Enzymes that break down old collagen accumulate activity, while the production of new fibers slows, creating a subtle imbalance. The tissue, therefore, becomes less capable of repairing microdamage before it accumulates into more noticeable weakness or stiffness. Cartilage, which cushions joints, becomes thinner and less hydrated, compounding the effects of collagen loss and reducing the joint's ability to absorb shock. Even the skin, our largest organ, illustrates this principle clearly. In youth, it stretches and recoils effortlessly, recovering from minor abrasions or pressure without leaving a trace. After 50, collagen fibers in the dermis diminish, elastin becomes fragmented, and the skin loses its smooth, resilient quality. Wrinkles form not as a sign of decay, but as a natural expression of how connective tissue evolves over decades. Beneath the surface, similar processes are occurring in tendons, ligaments, and cartilage, quietly altering how the body responds to strain and injury, and shaping the pace of recovery in ways we may only notice when it slows. Movement itself plays a role in the health of connective tissue. Unlike muscles, which can adapt and grow rapidly in response to exercise, connective tissues remodel slowly, often taking months to respond meaningfully to training stimuli. When we are young, even modest activity can maintain elasticity and resilience. But as collagen production slows and fibers stiffen, tissues require consistent, intentional load over time to maintain their functional capacity. Neglect or inactivity accelerates stiffness, while gentle, regular movement encourages fibroblasts to continue producing collagen and maintain matrix organization. Stretching, mobility work, resistance training, and weight-bearing activity all provide the mechanical signals that connective tissues need to stay adaptive, highlighting the interplay between biology and behavior in shaping how our bodies recover. The loss of elasticity in connective tissue also influences how the body senses itself. Proprioception, the subtle awareness of joint position and movement, depends in part on the elasticity and feedback of ligaments and tendons. When these structures stiffen, the sensory input they provide to the nervous system is altered, making movements feel heavier, slower, or more uncertain. This change reinforces the need for caution and patience in recovery, as the body's innate guidance system is also recalibrated by decades of structural change. Every step, stretch, and lift carries the history of tissue remodeling, a reminder that the architecture supporting movement is constantly evolving. Despite these shifts, the body's connective tissue retains remarkable adaptability. Even after 50, collagen synthesis can be stimulated. Elastin fibers can retain some recoil, and the matrix can respond to the signals of consistent, mindful movement. Recovery may take longer, but the body's ability to adapt and rebuild is far from lost. What changes is the tempo. Healing is measured, deliberate, and patient, requiring respect for the material realities of tissue that has lived, stretched, and borne decades of force and motion. Each day, each movement, and each moment of care contributes to preserving the subtle resilience that remains, allowing the body to continue functioning with grace and capability, even as it evolves. At the heart of every cell lies a tiny powerhouse called the mitochondrion, responsible for producing the energy that sustains life, fuels movement, and drives repair. These microscopic structures are far more than simple chemical factories. They are dynamic, responsive, and deeply integrated into the health of tissues, organs, and the body as a whole. In youth, mitochondria operate with remarkable efficiency, converting nutrients into usable energy with precision and speed. Every contraction of muscle, every signal between nerves, every immune cell mobilized to a wound relies on the steady hum of these organelles. But as we cross the threshold of 50, a quiet transformation takes place. The efficiency of mitochondria begins to wane, and the very currency of cellular energy, ATP, becomes more limited. This subtle decline may seem imperceptible at first, yet it profoundly affects the body's capacity to heal, adapt, and recover from the everyday stresses of life. The process begins with a gradual accumulation of mitochondrial damage. Over decades, exposure to environmental stressors, fluctuating hormone levels, and metabolic byproducts leads to small errors in the mitochondrial DNA and minor disruptions in their inner machinery. Unlike the DNA in our nuclei, mitochondrial DNA is more exposed and less protected, making it particularly vulnerable. As these imperfections accumulate, the efficiency of energy production diminishes. Cells receive fewer units of ATP to fuel their processes, and the timing of repair slows because each step, from immune activation to tissue regeneration, requires energy. A simple cut or strain that once demanded a brief burst of metabolic power now relies on a system with more limited reserves, lengthening the timeline of healing. Mitochondrial decline also affects the body's ability to respond to stress. When tissues are damaged, immune cells rush to the site. Fibroblasts rebuild tissue, and signaling molecules orchestrate repair. Each of these processes is energy intensive, and mitochondria provide the fuel. As their capacity diminishes, the body must carefully ration energy, prioritizing essential functions and slowing secondary processes. In practical terms, this means wounds close more slowly, inflammation may linger, and rebuilding damaged tissue takes longer than it did in younger years. Even low-grade, everyday damage, tiny tears in muscle fibers, micro-injuries in cartilage, or cellular stress from minor infections, accumulates because the energy available to repair and rejuvenate is not as abundant as before. The effects of mitochondrial decline are systemic, touching nearly every aspect of physiology. Muscles, which are heavily reliant on mitochondria for sustained activity, become slower to recover after exertion. Skin and connective tissue, which require energy-intensive synthesis of collagen and extracellular matrix components, heal more gradually. Even organs like the liver and kidneys, which perform constant repair and detoxification, operate under a more constrained energy budget. The body adapts, often without conscious awareness, by shifting priorities toward immediate survival and away from rapid repair, creating the subtle perception that recovery is simply taking longer. This decline is compounded by a decrease in the number and quality of mitochondria within cells. Mitochondria are dynamic, capable of fusing, dividing, and sometimes self-destructing to maintain healthy populations. After 50, these processes become less effective. Damaged mitochondria accumulate, reducing the overall energy efficiency of cells and contributing to a rise in oxidative stress, which can further impair cellular function. The very organelles responsible for fueling repair now face the challenge of maintaining themselves while also supporting the broader demands of the body, creating a quiet bottleneck in the healing process. Despite this slowing, mitochondria retain remarkable adaptability, responding to lifestyle and environmental cues even in later decades of life. Physical activity, particularly aerobic exercise, stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, encouraging cells to produce more mitochondria and enhance their efficiency. Nutrition, sleep, and stress management influence mitochondrial function, providing the raw materials and favorable conditions for energy production. While we cannot completely stop the gradual decline that comes with age, we can optimize the system, ensuring that each remaining mitochondrion operates at its best. Recovery, therefore, is not a passive process, but a dialogue between biology and behavior, between the energy that is available and the care we provide to our bodies. At a deeper level, the slowing of mitochondrial energy production is a reminder of the interconnection between time, biology, and resilience. The body is not failing. It is recalibrating, redistributing energy in ways that balance survival, repair, and long-term function. Healing is no longer a matter of speed alone, but of efficiency, prioritization, and patience. Each repair process unfolds in the context of limited resources, teaching us to respect the tempo of our bodies, to align activity with rest, and to understand that strength and recovery are not measured solely in hours or days, but in the sustainable capacity to continue functioning with grace. This shift in energy availability also shapes our perception of aging. What once felt effortless now requires planning, attention, and mindful management of exertion. The slowing of healing is not a punishment. It is a reflection of the body's remarkable intelligence, an adaptation that protects tissues from overexertion and injury when the machinery for energy production is less abundant. Recognizing the role of mitochondria allows us to approach recovery with insight, aligning expectations with biology and nurturing the body in ways that honor both its limitations and its enduring capabilities. One of the most subtle yet profound changes that occurs as we age is the gradual rise of chronic, low-level inflammation throughout the body. Unlike the sharp, dramatic inflammation that occurs immediately after an injury, a redness, swelling, or warmth signaling the arrival of immune cells. This type of inflammation is quieter, almost imperceptible, yet persistent, like a low hum running in the background of our biology. Scientists sometimes refer to it as inflammaging, a phenomenon that becomes more noticeable after 50 and has far-reaching consequences for tissue repair, immune function, and overall recovery. It is not that the body has lost the ability to heal, but rather that the environment in which repair occurs has shifted, creating resistance to the processes that once unfolded with effortless efficiency. Inflammation is a natural and essential response, critical for mobilizing immune cells to sites of injury or infection, clearing debris, and signaling other cells to begin repair. In youth, this process is tightly regulated. Inflammation arises quickly, performs its task, and then recedes, allowing tissue reconstruction to proceed. After 50, however, the regulatory mechanisms that switch off the inflammatory response begin to lose precision. Signals that once returned inflammation to baseline linger longer, creating a subtle but persistent presence of immune activity, cytokines, and other signaling molecules, essential for communication between cells, remain elevated in the tissues even when no acute threat exists. This persistent activity alters the local environment of tissues, subtly changing how fibroblasts, stem cells, and other repair cells behave. The effects of this low-level inflammation are cumulative and far-reaching. In connective tissue, the presence of inflammatory molecules can interfere with the formation of new collagen, slowing the rebuilding of tendons, ligaments, and skin. In muscles, it can disrupt the balance between protein synthesis and breakdown, prolonging the recovery after minor strains or exercise-induced microtears. Even within the vascular system, chronic inflammation can stiffen arteries and impair circulation, reducing the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to damaged areas. Every repair process is dependent not only on the intrinsic capabilities of cells, but also on the environment in which they operate. And chronic inflammation subtly tilts that environment toward resistance rather than efficiency. Part of the reason this inflammation accumulates is the slow decline in immune system regulation. The thymus, a key organ in developing immune cells, gradually shrinks with age, altering the production of certain lymphocytes, regulatory T cells, which help suppress unnecessary immune activity, also decline, reducing the body's ability to quiet inflammation when it is no longer needed. Macrophages and other immune cells, responsible for clearing damaged tissue and coordinating repair, may become overactive or misdirected, releasing pro-inflammatory signals that interfere with rather than support healing. The body is not attacking itself in a catastrophic way, but the lingering signals create friction in the precise choreography required for efficient repair. Lifestyle and environmental factors can amplify this process. Diets high in processed foods, sugar, and trans fats, chronic stress, poor sleep, and sedentary behavior all contribute to persistent inflammatory signaling. Even subtle, repeated insults, pollutants, minor infections, or oxidative stress accumulate, maintaining the hum of inflammation. Conversely, regular movement, anti-inflammatory nutrition rich in vegetables, fruits, and omega-3 fatty acids, stress management practices, and restorative sleep help reduce this baseline inflammation, creating a more favorable environment for repair. These interventions do not reverse aging, but they can influence the magnitude and impact of the inflammatory background, demonstrating the delicate interplay between biology and behavior. Inflammation also interacts with other aspects of aging in ways that compound its effects. When mitochondrial energy production declines, as we discussed earlier, cells have fewer resources to resolve inflammation effectively. When connective tissues lose elasticity, they become more prone to microinjuries that trigger immune activity. The combination of energy limitation, structural change, and persistent inflammatory signaling creates a feedback loop. Tissues sustain small injuries, inflammation lingers longer, repair slows, and vulnerability to further damage increases. The process is gradual, often imperceptible, yet it profoundly shapes the pace and quality of recovery after 50. Yet, within this challenge lies remarkable intelligence. Inflammation is not inherently harmful. It is the body's attempt to protect, adapt, and maintain integrity. The slower resolution of inflammation may reflect a recalibration of priorities, a cautious approach to repair in tissues that are less resilient or have accumulated decades of microdamage. The body is negotiating the balance between immediate repair and long-term stability, ensuring that efforts to heal do not inadvertently create instability or overtax limited resources. Each lingering inflammatory signal carries information, a subtle directive to the body that it must operate more deliberately, more patiently, and with careful allocation of energy and cellular activity. Recognizing the role of chronic inflammation also changes the way we approach recovery. Healing is not simply a matter of waiting for tissue to knit together. It requires nurturing an environment that is conducive to repair, supporting circulation, reducing unnecessary stressors, and promoting anti-inflammatory practices allow cells to perform their work more efficiently. Even within the constraints imposed by age, recovery becomes a dialogue between the body's intrinsic intelligence and the choices we make to honor it. A conscious effort to work with the signals of inflammation rather than against them. Over time, this understanding transforms how we perceive aging itself. The body is not failing. It is adapting, adjusting, and negotiating a complex landscape shaped by decades of living. The subtle hum of low-level inflammation reminds us that healing is no longer instantaneous, that patience and care are essential companions, and that every small injury is an invitation to respect the wisdom of a system that has learned to balance urgency with caution. In this context, recovery is not simply a physiological process, but an ongoing conversation with the body, guided by insight, attention, and a deep appreciation for the resilience and intelligence embedded within each cell. As we navigate the years beyond 50, one of the most profound truths about our bodies is that healing does not vanish, it transforms. Recovery no longer unfolds with the rapidity we once took for granted. Instead, It becomes measured, deliberate, and patient. This is not a sign of decline, but a reflection of the accumulated wisdom embedded in our biology. Every cell, every tissue, every organ has experienced decades of use, adaptation, and stress, and the processes that govern repair have evolved to match the realities of this history. Healing is not lost, it is reshaped, operating on a timetable that respects the limitations and strengths of a body that has lived. What was once immediate and reflexive now requires careful orchestration, and understanding this shift is essential for cultivating both patience and effectiveness in care. This transformation is rooted in the interplay of multiple systems within the body, each of which adapts to the cumulative effects of age. Cellular signaling, which coordinates repair, slows as messenger molecules become less abundant or less responsive, requiring a longer period to recruit the right cells to the right place. Connective tissues, having lost some elasticity, recover more gradually from strain, meaning that even minor injuries demand extended periods of rest and adaptation. Mitochondria, the energy producers within our cells, operate with reduced efficiency, limiting the resources available for the complex, energy-intensive process of rebuilding tissue. Chronic, low-level inflammation creates subtle resistance to repair, altering the environment in which cells attempt to work. Each of these factors alone would slow recovery, but together they redefine how healing unfolds, emphasizing quality and sustainability over speed. The deliberate nature of healing after 50 is, in many ways, a form of biological prudence. Rapid repair can be risky when tissues are less resilient, energy is constrained, and cellular communication is noisier. The body has learned, over decades, to prioritize processes that maintain long-term stability over short-term immediacy. A tendon tear, a cut, or a strain will take longer to mend, but the repair is often more robust and carefully integrated with surrounding tissues, minimizing the risk of re-injury or complication. This reflects an innate intelligence. The body compensates for slowing processes not by abandoning repair, but by adjusting the tempo to suit the condition of the tissue, the available resources, and the overall context of the organism's health. Patience becomes an essential component of recovery, not merely a psychological adjustment, but a physiological necessity. Attempting to rush repair through overexertion, ignoring rest, or pushing against discomfort can overwhelm the delicate orchestration of cells, proteins, and signaling molecules, creating setbacks rather than progress. Understanding that the body now requires time to respond allows us to align our actions with its capabilities. Gentle movement, appropriate nutrition, and restorative practices become not optional but critical elements of effective healing, supporting the deliberate pace that the body has adopted. Even small adjustments, like spacing activity, prioritizing sleep, and managing stress, can dramatically influence how efficiently tissues rebuild and how resilient the body remains. This transformation in healing also reshapes our perception of the body itself. Where once we measured strength and recovery by speed, we now come to appreciate subtlety, patience, and nuance. The body is no longer a machine designed for immediate repair, but a complex system with memory, foresight, and the ability to balance competing demands. Healing is a negotiation, not a race, and each delayed recovery is not failure, but evidence of a system carefully weighing energy, structural integrity, and long-term outcomes. Recognizing this allows us to approach our bodies with compassion, understanding that slowing is not weakness, but an adaptive strategy honed over decades of living, moving, and responding to stress. Even the psychological dimension of recovery is influenced by this shift. Patience, mindfulness, and attentiveness to the body's signals become allies in supporting repair. Awareness of limitations, careful pacing, and listening to discomfort are not signs of frailty, but forms of intelligence, allowing the body to perform its work without being overwhelmed. At the same time, the deliberate nature of healing can foster resilience as we learn to plan, adapt, and optimize the environment for recovery, whether through supportive movement, targeted nutrition, or stress reduction. The slow tempo encourages us to engage with the body's needs intentionally, cultivating a deeper understanding of the processes that sustain life and well-being. Importantly, this transformation is not uniform. It varies between individuals, tissues, and circumstances. Some systems maintain relatively high responsiveness, while others slow more dramatically, creating a complex mosaic of healing capacity. This variability reflects both genetics and lifestyle, illustrating that while aging sets the stage for more deliberate repair, choices around activity, nutrition, sleep, and stress profoundly influence the tempo and effectiveness of recovery. In this sense, aging is both a biological reality and a personal narrative, shaped by decades of interaction between the body and the environment. At a fundamental level, the shift toward deliberate healing is a testament to the intelligence of the human body. It recognizes limitations, allocates resources carefully, and structures repair in a way that balances immediate needs with long-term integrity. The processes that govern repair are no longer driven solely by urgency, but by wisdom. The accumulated experience of tissues, cells, and organs that have witnessed decades of movement, strain, and adaptation. Each recovery, each repaired tissue is evidence of this ongoing negotiation between capacity and demand, between resilience and resourcefulness, between patience and necessity.